Hello and welcome to Let's Talk About Mental Health. This episode is going to be focusing on men's mental health, and it's such a big varied topic, so I'm going to be speaking specifically more about eating disorders in men. And I didn't even introduce myself. Hello, I'm Bandy, I'm the Brucey Wealth Officer. I think I always butcher that in every episode. If you haven't seen the other episodes, episode 1 talks about my anxiety and how I managed that through university. The second one is about BAME mental health. The third one is about mental health in lockdown and how to support yourself and all the support services that are out there for you if you are a Reading student. So yes, and I realise that I am not a man, and it's a bit odd that I'm going to talk about men's mental health and not a male. But I think the way I'm going to approach this video is that I'm going to be looking at statistics and facts, and I'm going to be reviewing at the end Freddy Flintoff's documentary on bulimia and eating disorders, which I'll link down below. It was so interesting, but I'll be talking about that later on. So I thought, I always love my definition at the start of a video, but I think it is always really good to start off with a definition. And a definition of an eating disorder is, by the way, I will be referring to my notes because I'm due diligent like that, but an eating disorder is when you have an unhealthy attitude. I really butchered that, An eating disorder is when you have an unhealthy attitude towards food which can take over your life and make you ill. And currently there's 4 types of eating disorders. One is probably the most commonly known one, which is anorexia nervosa, and that is when you restrict your intake of calories, over-exercise, overly worry about food constantly, and then that affects your daily functioning, day-to-day life. I've gotten all these definitions and stuff from the NHS website, which I'll link down below. But the second one is bulimia, and that is associated with binging and purging. So you're eating a lot of food and then you feel super guilty about it, and then you purge afterwards. And that's a cyclical cycle. There's also binge eating disorder, so that's when you eat loads of food at once, and I don't mean a packet of biscuits, I mean a lot of food, and then you feel extreme guilt afterwards, and this impairs your daily functioning and really affects your mood overall. And the most, which I found really interesting when researching this video, is that the most common eating disorder is other specified feeding / eating disorder. So that's called OFSFED. I don't think I butchered that. So that's basically when it doesn't actually, your type of eating disorder doesn't actually fit neatly into those categories. And regarding men's eating disorders, I don't think it's as talked about and is as known, but I was reading a Guardian article, and it's suggesting to them, they looked at NHS hospital admissions, and this article is 3 years old, by the way, so this is recent data. I'd say this is I can't even remember when 3 years ago this was 3 years ago, but it says that male eating disorders have risen by 70% in NHS hospital admissions, and males over 19, so in 2010-2011 it was about 480 cases, and that risen to 818 by April 2015 to March 2016. So that is God, that's more than double, which is insane. And they interviewed a psychiatrist specialising within eating disorders in males, and he said some of the reasons or the risk factors of men getting eating disorders is pressure of body perfection for all men, which is a risk factor of developing an eating disorder. And I think obviously it's so many factors. It can't be just down to one. It's, a little bit of family, genetics, it's to do with societal pressures, individual experiences. So there's definitely not one, magic bullet to say this is why you have an eating disorder. But I don't know, I think I'm just so surprised about that figure. I did psychology in my undergraduate and I didn't learn too much about eating disorders, but we did have one module kind of covering it. And, majority of the research studies on eating disorders was typically just females, and the criticism for all the studies was always we need more male participants and stuff. And I think the figure must be so much higher because I think there's definitely a barrier for men kind of accessing help if they have an eating disorder, because it's kind of seen, it's quite gendered biased. It's always seen as a female mental health condition, which is ridiculous because mental health, disorders don't typically have a gender bias, if that makes sense. Obviously sometimes it's seen in more than one gender than the other. I don't know if that made sense, please let me know. But if you got my drift, basically. And that's so fascinating, because I think within the female kind of social media and stuff, there's been such a big movement with body neutrality, food neutrality, body positivity, and making such headways in the media. For example, Rihanna did a fashion show for Savage Fenty, and there was an article, I think I saw a tweet which went viral. She had a male plus size model in there, and this man was this is the first time I've seen someone who looks like me represented in such high fashion. And that made me really think, wow, I'm not saying women's is straight ahead with kind of innovation, with kind of seeing more diversity within body images in social media, but there's definitely a long way to go. But I realised for men it's just starting. That's just my personal opinion. There's just really not been a lot done about that, and I think that's why that tweet got so much press coverage, because it kind of started the conversation and dialogue about male body image, which isn't really spoken about in mainstream media as much as female body image, for instance. And that kind of moves on swiftly to and this is what kind of made me think more about the topic, was when I watched Freddy Flintoff's documentary on kind of male eating disorders and stuff. It was highly advertised. I don't know if it is still up on BBC. I will link it down below if it is. But so if you don't know who he is, he's basically a really famous cricketer. I think he was captain for England, correct me if I'm wrong, definitely think he is. So he, and now he was the presenter of the new version of Top Gear, and so he's a really well-known public figure, and the trailer of the documentary was saying I've hidden something for so many years, I haven't really spoken about it and how it's affected me. But when he was 19, he was in the media a lot, but he also got criticised for his body weight and being slightly, I don't think he was overweight by any means, but he got criticised for being overweight, and he was made fun of. There was so apparently it was just so horrible. There was so many articles about him, if he wasn't really doing a good game, for instance, in cricket, then the media headlines and stuff would say, oh, maybe it's because of his weight. So there was almost this like spotlight on his body, and that's when it started for him. So he started like eating and then purging the food. So and then, you know, he lost all this weight around like 22, 23, and you know, he's really fit, really healthy, and he was really into exercise, but that was his life. And it was so interesting at like the start of the documentary, you just see him like commenting on like other people's like bodies and stuff, like not in like a horrible way, but like he said that's literally the first thing he thinks about, like you know, it's about like he's comparing his body to someone else's straight away in the street, when he's walking, when he's, you know, going shopping and stuff. Like it's so ingrained into his mind. And it, like the whole documentary, I highly recommend you watch it, but like the whole documentary was like he's kind of exploring bulimia in men, like interviewing other people, interviewing doctors and stuff, and he's kind of giving his backstory about how it started for him. But I don't think he has never seen or sought professional help ever. Like the documentary is in a sense is like his way of trying to get help. And he was, you know, it's so interesting because he was going through, sorry, someone literally called me mid-filming, but oh my god, I completely forgot where I was. But I think I was at the bit when kind of explaining that he still hadn't gotten help. He was in the process of getting help, which is like insane to me. I think he's like 40 now, and he kind of met men through the journey, and they were like in the midst of kind of getting therapy and on medication and stuff. So yeah, and I think that like baffles my mind. I don't like, if I'm like unwell, or if you're ill, or if you've broken a leg, you go to the doctor straight away. Whereas like it's so interesting, like with like mental illness or mental health issues, you tend to just wait till, you know, like the last resort, and then, you know, when you're really bad, when it's harder to like get treated essentially. You know, for instance, like an infection, like if you go to day 10 to the doctors rather than day 2 to 3, it's like much more difficult to treat. And I think that's similar-ish to kind of like mental health illnesses and conditions. And, you know, he's super fit now. Like he goes to the gym, like I think he's like semi-retired now, but he kind of hits the gym like 6-7 times in a week, so every single day. And I find that crazy. Like he's so obsessed, but in a you can tell in a quite unhealthy way. And I don't know, I think it's just so interesting, because I think on social media you see just that person with like a really good body, but sometimes there is like a mental health condition behind it, and I don't think people see that or think about that. But yeah, so I really enjoyed the documentary. I learned so much, so I highly recommend you watch it. And I think it's just so great, like for such a big like sports personality to come out and just be really vulnerable and really truthful in a documentary and get to know him a bit better was just honestly one of the most like bravest things you could do. So yeah, so I feel like I've rambled, I always say that, but yes, so I hope you have enjoyed the episode. I will leave all the links down below, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.